When I slid a single-dollar bill across the gas station counter to help an old man who couldn't afford a 99-cent hot dog, I thought I'd forgotten about it the moment I walked out the door. I was just trying to do a quick act of kindness on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. No praise, no thanks needed. But 7 days later, my commanding officer summoned me to the main headquarters with an urgency that made my stomach drop. I assumed I was in trouble or facing a sudden transfer. Instead, as the heavy wooden doors swung open, standing in the center of the office was a man in a crisp dress uniform with 4 gleaming stars pinned to his shoulders. He turned, locked eyes with me, and said my full name before anyone else could speak. "Please follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Lila Bennett. I'm 28 years old, and up until that Tuesday afternoon, I thought my life was completely predictable. I was working as a junior administrative specialist at a military installation just outside Dallas, spending most of my days handling routine station management and coordination. It was a drizzly, overcast day when I pulled into a small, weathered gas station off the highway to grab a quick coffee before my afternoon shift. While waiting in line, I noticed an elderly man standing at the register ahead of me. He wore a faded, oversized field jacket that looked like it had seen decades of wear, and his hands trembled slightly as he meticulously counted out pocket change onto the counter. He was trying to buy a plain gas station hot dog and a small bottle of water, but after counting every last nickel and penny, he was short. Exactly $1 short. The young cashier sighed heavily, tapping her fingernails impatiently on the counter without a trace of empathy. "Look, mister, if you don't have the dollar, I can't give you the hot dog," she said, her voice carrying across the quiet store. The old man's shoulders slumped, but he didn't argue. He apologized quietly and began gathering his coins with a quiet dignity that hit me right in the chest. Without thinking twice, I stepped forward, slid a single-dollar bill across the counter, and looked at the cashier. "Keep the change. It's covered," I said softly. The old man turned to thank me, but I just offered a warm smile, picked up my coffee, and walked straight out to my car. I didn't want him to feel embarrassed or like he owed me anything. To me, it was just $1. I never imagined that single bill was about to change the entire course of my life. By the time I pulled back onto the base, the encounter had completely slipped my mind. Life as a 28-year-old officer in a massive administrative division didn't leave much room for lingering on minor details. My daily routine was an endless cycle of auditing requisitions, reviewing personnel assignments, and trying to keep up with the overwhelming operational pace that kept our unit running. I loved my service, but truth be told, it was a thankless job. I was ambitious, but in a command structure that size, a junior specialist like me was practically invisible. I had been quietly hoping for a recommendation to an advanced logistics program for months, but my immediate supervisor, Captain Miller, barely seemed to remember my name unless there was a delay. 6 days passed without anything out of the ordinary. Then, on Monday morning, everything changed. I was sitting at my desk halfway through my morning tasks when the intercom on my desk buzzed loudly. It was Captain Miller's assistant, her voice sounding unusually sharp and panicked. "Bennett, drop whatever you're doing. You're summoned to the commander's office at headquarters immediately." My chest tightened instantly. A direct summons to the main headquarters building wasn't a routine matter. It usually meant a major operational issue, a severe disciplinary action, or devastating news. I quickly checked my uniform, ensuring every brass pin and crease was immaculate, but my hands were shaking. As I walked down the long, cold hallway toward the commander's suite, 100 catastrophic scenarios raced through my mind. Had I made a critical mistake? Was my career over before it even had a chance to start? I took a deep breath, knocked on the heavy wooden door, and stepped inside. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind me, sealing me inside the commander's inner sanctuary. The atmosphere in the room was suffocatingly tense. Captain Miller was standing off to the side, his jaw tight and his posture unnaturally stiff. Colonel Harris, our base commander, looked equally rigid behind his massive mahogany desk. But neither of them held my attention for long. Standing right in the center of the room, facing the high-arched windows, was a man whose presence filled the entire office. He turned around slowly, and my breath caught in my throat. Pinned to his immaculate dress uniform were 4 gleaming silver stars, a 4-star general. In our world, a 4-star officer was practically a legend, someone you only saw on television or in historical archives, directing global operations and high-level strategy. My heart hammered wildly against my ribs as I immediately snapped into a crisp, rigid salute, staring straight ahead at the wall. I prepared myself for whatever reprimand was about to shatter my military career. "At ease, Officer Bennett," a deep, gravelly voice echoed through the room. I dropped my salute, my eyes instinctively meeting his sharp, steel-gray gaze. Before Colonel Harris or Captain Miller could utter a single word of introduction, the general walked over to me, stopping just 2 feet away. "Lila Bennett," he said, pronouncing my full name with an undeniable weight of authority. "Junior Administrative Specialist, 3rd Battalion." Captain Miller blinked in visible shock, utterly stunned that a high-ranking military official knew the exact name and rank of a minor administrative clerk in his department. The general looked at the bewildered faces of my superiors, then turned back to me with the shadow of a smile. "I didn't come here today to inspect this base, Bennett. I came here looking for you." I stood paralyzed as the general reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a worn black and white photograph. He handed it to me. The image showed a young, decorated soldier standing proudly in full combat gear during the Vietnam War, holding a rifle with steady determination. But it was the eyes in the photo that struck me. They were unmistakable. "That man in the photograph is my father, General Arthur Hayes Sr." the general said quietly, his voice softening. "He's a retired command sergeant major and a recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross. But at 84 years old, he refuses to live in a grand house or accept special favors. He lives in a modest cottage outside Dallas and walks to the local gas station every afternoon just to feel like part of the world." The realization hit me like a physical bolt of electricity. The old man in the faded field jacket, counting nickels for a hot dog on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. "He wasn't out of money," General Hayes continued, looking directly into my eyes. "He's a man of routine who simply forgot his wallet on his kitchen counter that afternoon. He tried to explain it to the cashier, but he was treated like a nuisance. He told me that dozens of people walked past him, looking right through him as if he were invisible." The general took a step closer, his expression filled with profound respect. "My father came home that evening and told me about a young woman in a military uniform who didn't just see an old man short on cash. She saw a fellow human being. You didn't do it for recognition or a reward, Lila. You gave him his dignity back for the price of a single dollar." General Hayes turned his gaze toward Colonel Harris and Captain Miller, both of whom looked thoroughly stunned, their previous rigid indifference evaporating completely. "In my 40 years of service," the general said, his voice echoing through the quiet office, "I've learned that a person's true character isn't revealed when they are wearing polished brass in front of their commanders. It's revealed in quiet, unremembered moments when they think nobody is watching. Most people walk through life looking for ways to advance themselves, but rare officers look for ways to lift others up." Captain Miller shifted uncomfortably, clearing his throat as if suddenly remembering the months he had spent ignoring my requests for career advancement. The general noticed the gesture and turned back to me with an approving nod. "Officer Bennett, I've reviewed your performance records over the weekend," General Hayes continued, leaning forward with authority. "I noticed you were passed over for the Strategic Logistics and Command Leadership Program, a program you were more than qualified for. My office happens to oversee selection for that precise department." He looked directly at Colonel Harris with a firm smile. I am personally authorizing your transfer today. You'll be moving to the Advanced Leadership Academy in Washington at the end of the month. We need officers with high intellect, but more than that, we need leaders who possess genuine integrity and empathy. My jaw dropped, my mind struggling to keep up with the overwhelming turn of events. In a matter of minutes, a forgotten dollar had completely rewritten my military trajectory. Before leaving headquarters, General Hayes asked me to join him downstairs in the reception hall. Sitting near the window in a quiet armchair was Sergeant Major Arthur Hayes Sr. himself, dressed in a sharp blazer and looking far more rested than the day I saw him at the gas station. When he saw me approaching in my uniform, his face lit up with a warm, genuine smile, and he slowly stood up to greet me. "Officer Bennett," he said, holding out a weathered hand. "I never got the chance to properly thank you for your kindness that afternoon. You reminded me that the values we fought for are still alive in the next generation." I shook his hand, feeling a deep sense of humility. "It was an honor, Sergeant Major. You didn't owe me any thanks at all." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metallic object, gently pressing it into the palm of my hand. It was an old, heavy brass challenge coin, worn smooth around the edges from years of service in Vietnam. "Take this," he whispered softly. "Rank and titles come and go, but respect is earned through empathy. Never lose that." I held the coin tightly, feeling the weight of decades of history and sacrifice behind it. Standing there between two military legends, I realized that my small gesture had created a bridge between generations. It wasn't about the money or the promotion. It was about honoring the dignity of those who came before us. 2 weeks later, I packed my bags and prepared to board a flight to Washington, D.C. to begin my new chapter at the Leadership Academy. As I sat in the airport terminal, I pulled out Sergeant Major Hayes's brass coin and turned it over in my fingers. It served as a constant, quiet reminder that our actions, no matter how small or insignificant they might seem at the time, always carry weight. You never truly know whose life you are touching, or how a simple act of decency might circle back to shape your own destiny. Living with integrity isn't about looking for rewards or seeking the spotlight. It's about doing the right thing simply because it's the right thing to do, especially when you think nobody is watching. Looking back, that single-dollar bill didn't just buy a hot dog for a forgotten veteran. It opened a door to a future I had only ever dreamed of, proving that genuine empathy is the most powerful rank anyone can hold. Now, I'm curious to hear from all of you. What would you have done if you were standing in that gas station line? Have you ever experienced a small act of kindness that unexpectedly changed your life? Drop a comment below and let me know. And don't forget to mention the city you're watching from so I can see how far our community reaches. On the screen right now,